Universe, it's your girl Corazora here today to give you guys another video. So today I am doing another podcast. It has been a while, I know, it's been quite some time. And like I've said before, when I do podcasts, I like to talk about all types of topics. But what I really like to talk about the most is movies. As I made it very clear, I'm also an actor. I've gone to school and have a degree in acting, of course. And I'm also here with another good friend of mine who is also a filmmaker. I'm here with my good buddy, Michael Edward Late. Michael, how are you doing?
I could be better, but thank you for asking. I'm doing fine.
Great. I'm happy to hear that. And today, honestly, the reason why this podcast is happening is because my friend Michael actually wanted to do a podcast. He wanted to talk about some topics that are going on with movies, one particular topic or one particular genre in general. And I was like, hell yeah, let's talk about it, because these are issues that we need to talk about that I notice certain critics don't really mention at all. They're always kissing Hollywood's ass, and I actually don't like that. We got to be honest about what we want, because if we don't really ask for what we want, we're going to keep getting the same shit. And that's what's been happening lately, unfortunately. So today, the topic that we're going to be talking about is going to be horror movies, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And my question to you first, Mike, is how often do you watch horror movies?
Well, since we've been shut in, I can tell you right now, the amount of accounts I have, a good majority of them are horror movies. Okay. And I also own a good chunk of classics.
Before we were all shut in, did you watch horror movies a lot, or was this just recently?
No, it was very recently because, again, I guess the horror genre kind of skips over a few things. I want to say movies right now, especially when it's streaming, I have a huge problem with streaming. Any movies that come up on streaming, I kind of pass over it because it takes away the experience of being in the theater, binge watch shows. But nowadays, I'm kind of just like, let me look at some movies. And one thing that popped up because I watched a show called Supernatural. I don't know if you heard of it.
I have never watched it, but I have, yes.
So watch Supernatural. Netflix recommended it for me. A bunch of horror movie genres, and then since I watched those on Netflix, went to HBO Max, which has the Insidious chapters, the Conjuring chapters. Paramount has all the Paranormal Activity and found footage kind of stuff. So I've been kind of jumping from place to place, looking at horror movies in their genre.
When it comes to horror movies, right, let's start from something simple and then we'll get to more interesting topics, of course. So my first question is, when it comes to horror movies, what is it about horror movies that you like exactly?
That's a good question. I guess I like the fear factor. Like sitting and grabbing the edge of your seat. You don't know what's gonna happen, especially in the classics. Because they give you my stepdad pointed this out because he said if you watched a classic Friday the 13th, it would show one person, but Jason doesn't kill that person you think he was. It'd be a person completely on the other side of the camp. And then he would kill that person. You weren't expecting that. You were expecting dumb bitch number one to die instead of, another idiot. And I kind of enjoyed that was a good fake out. Again, it's the fear factor that I love. I want to be on the edge of my seat when I see these people making dumb decisions and the killer's there. You just want to know how it's going to happen.
Yeah, you never want, when it comes to if it's a horror type of movie that involves a serial killer, if it's unidentified, you want to figure out who it is, right? You don't want to know right away. If it is someone that you do know right away, you kind of want to figure out, all right, depending on how they make it, how do they take care of the situation, and so on and so on. For me, the reason why I like horror movies is just because of sometimes horror movies are like mysteries. You're always trying to find out what's the cause of it, whether it's based on a true story, whether it's based on something that was just made up or in a book or whatever the heck. Because I made it very clear to Mike, and for those of you that don't know, I'm a huge fan of mysteries. I love mystery movies. I love mystery games and all this other stuff in general. So that's kind of horror movies sometimes. And sometimes they do a great job trying to make you figure out who's doing it, who's behind it. Perfect example, Scream 1, right? The best thing about the first Scream movie that everybody liked was who was Scream, who kept doing all the killing.
Yeah.
And then when you found out in the end who it was, and if you haven't seen it by now, I won't spoil it. But basically, the reaction is when you find out, you're kind of like, what? It was him? Oh, whoa, right? So,
yeah,
that's
but then you had every other Scream with copycat killers.
Yeah, and we'll get to that later. So my question also is, when it comes to horror movies, do you prefer horror movies from back then when it started, let's say 1950s to 70s, right? And even a little after that? Or do you prefer horror movies the way how they are now with CGI, and high budgeted sometimes, and they're all remade and stuff? Do you prefer old but not high budgeted? Perfect example, Halloween, right? But still, great movie, despite the way how it was made. Or would you prefer new movies nowadays? Like, let's say something like Insidious or like The Conjuring with CGI, high budgets and stuff like that, like top-notch actors. Like, what would you prefer, back then or now?
I kind of want to say back then because I've been watching the classics. That's what's been on, like I said, HBO Max and Netflix and all that stuff. It's the classic stuff. Then you get into like the newer genres and stuff. I highly recommend watching classic movies because they have a better fear factor than the newer ones. The newer ones have the tendency to give away the kill.
Even horror movies like from the 1910 to 30s. Perfect example: Dracula, Wolfman, The Mummy, Invisible Man. They all were great. Now, and the best thing about them was that you were trying to figure out how they were going to beat them. That's what I really liked about it, especially since they weren't really human,
Yeah.
Especially Invisible Man. Invisible Man was interesting. But when it comes to how horror movies especially are nowadays, unfortunately, there are a lot of problems. My biggest problem, this is my question that I would like to hear you on, and I would also like to comment on this one also. Do you feel like horror movies nowadays are used for easy cash grabs, or do you feel like that's with any genre?
That's anything. That is basically anything. Even with another good example for easy cash grab is the Fast and Furious, the superhero movies, any rom-com with specific actors. Those are easy cash grabs.
Yes and no. I have to disagree with you on that. You are right. You actually mentioned some good examples. Some of the easiest cash grabs are obviously superhero movies, like we talked about off screen. In my opinion, I'm honestly burned down on superhero movies. Like there are some that do catch my interest, but unfortunately there are so many, movies or shows that a lot of people are kind of going out now. People don't care, they watch the main stories and now they're like, oh, this other shit, whatever. When it comes to like the Fast and the Furious, well, for that franchise, I'll say that's a yes or a no. I mean, Vin Diesel has made it clear he wanted to do 10, right? So it's not really for cash grab. He wants to do 10. So that's technically on him. That's not Universal, especially since Universal is very strict, like very, very strict, especially with copyright claims from what I've dealt with. I honestly don't feel like any other genre is as easy as a cash grab as horror. Because think about it. If somebody made like a love movie, would you really go watch that? And you can tell it's a cash grab?
Depending on the actors, probably.
But like, let's say like there weren't no famous actors. It was just like something just to be made, just to make some money for like a new project. You can tell.
Probably not.
Exactly. But if you see something that's horror, whether it's based on something real or not or random, you would probably go see it because it's a horror. And it's fun to go see horror movies, right?
Yeah, but again, the horror movies kind of just now started for me. So
okay.
My personal opinion, like horror movies just kind of started for me because again, we've been shut in. So if like a horror movie jumped up now, probably wouldn't watch it.
Gotcha. Well, that's what's been kind of going on. A perfect example, The Seed of Chucky or Chucky's Wife. Like when those two movies came out, they were bad. But like they were like classic, like early 2000 movies. Like you could tell the way how they were made, all about teenagers, and it was about sex, and then it was random creative serial killings with bad CGI at the time. That's when I was like, this is a cash grab. This is so stupid. I was like, wow. So those are
Britney
examples.
Spears, like 3 minute on camera death.
That's what I'm saying. Like those are just easy cash grabs. That's why I was like, I can't take these movies seriously. Like if anyone actually gives this movie a good score, I'm gonna be like, you are out of your damn mind. How did you get this job? My next question is obviously because you just started getting into horror movies, and you made it very clear you watched classics. You've seen the classics like 1910s to 30s, and you've seen some recent ones even from now to maybe like 5-10 years ago, like Insidious, maybe Conjuring.
Yeah, no, I've seen it because you're the one that was talking about it the first time to try and get me to watch it. I think it was either The Conjuring. Yeah, so I finally got around to watching that. Also got around to watching Insidious. I don't know if you would count that. A Quiet Place. I don't know if you would count that one.
A Quiet Place isn't really horror. It's more of a thriller.
Okay, well, for some reason it fell under horror. I don't know why.
I could totally see that too. I mean, this is a small question. Like Jaws, like when at the time the movie came out, do you consider Jaws 1 to be a horror movie, or do you find it? I don't thriller.
I would say more thriller. I don't really find it as horror because it's about a giant shark eating people.
But John Krasinski, who is the main actor who also directed the movie, he made a comment saying that the reason why he made this movie was because he basically wanted to make a new version of Jaws for like this generation. So if his inspiration was from Jaws, then I'm thinking, oh, okay, so then this isn't really a horror type of thing. instead of a shark, we got like this mutated alien or something. So
That
like
that's
I mean, big difference, but like, you know, like that's what I'm saying. If his inspiration was from that, then to me, I'm thinking, okay, he wasn't technically trying to go for horror. It was more for a thriller type of thing.
oh yeah, just like the big monster that can kill you through sound if he hears you, but like they're super sensitive to high frequency.
And to finish my question, I was asking if you watch those type of movies just because my question is, do you also by any chance know any indie horror movies?
I want to say the closest indie film horror film I've ever seen was oh wow, that's a good question. I don't even know if it counts as an indie film. It's called I think Neighbor or something like that. So like the found footage kind of way. And I don't know if that's the name of it, but it was weird. It was very, very weird. And it was a horror.
It did its job.
It did its job. But like when I sat there and watched it, I was like, okay, I'm expecting something like Paranormal Activity or like found footage movies. But it wasn't. It was something completely weird, and you didn't think like this, and it had a bunch of fake outs in it too.
I mean, Paranormal Activity was technically an indie movie.
When they started getting more and more.
Oh, no, it wasn't that. When the studio actually saw Paranormal Activity, they said that they would distribute it, but all they asked in return was that they changed the ending because they didn't like the ending for Paranormal Activity, the first one. And then obviously after that, they made so many others that were so unnecessary.
There's 7 Paranormal Activities in total.
Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? But okay, the reason why I ask is because nowadays we're given the opportunity to do movies with our own budgets, find people on our own, make it the way how we want to with no interference. Obviously, it's still a tough job, but luckily, if you can find a small studio to help you, you can make that small indie movie. And what's great about indie films is the fact that because there's no high studio telling you what to do or what to change, you have your own creative style from today's time. Do you feel like indie horror movies are better than high budget movies?
Completely. They are 100% better than any high budget film out there. Again, like going back to my point, like you said, you watched the original Paranormal Activity. If they just stuck to being, indie instead of dealing with the company, I'm pretty sure that would have been 100% great. It would have been fucking it would have been good. And then you compare that. Okay, so let me rephrase it like this. Say Paranormal Activity never went with the company. Okay. And they stood in Invenville. And then the exact same day that came out, you go see a movie like La Llorona, that piece of shit horror movie.
It had a good concept, but I just didn't like where it took place. It was clearly a Mexican like story, like folk creature.
Yeah.
And instead of going to a location in Mexico, they filmed it here in America. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like,
so you see what I mean? It's just like, for me, high budgeted films like that, you had a good concept, but now you had a bunch of the studio thinking, oh, this is what people like. Let's shoot it here. No, people don't like it here. How about you do it where the location of this fictional character is from? Paranormal Activity, it was shot in LA because it was a freaking found footage thing. And it's a demon. They're pretty much universal.
Okay, let me ask you this one, right? I want to give you like a fun question. Which horror franchise that you've seen do you think is the best?
Nightmare on Elm Street. I love those. I
really?
Yeah, I really like those. Except for the remakes. The remakes are garbage until
too much on jump scares.
Yeah, up until I want to say the Dream Warriors is where it had me.
My favorite genre would definitely have to be Michael Myers. I like Halloween. I mean, even though some of them are dumb, especially Halloween.
Halloween 3, Halloween H2O.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck? Or I think it was 5 or 6, the one where Michael Myers joins a cult, and I was like, what the hell? I like Michael Myers because he's interesting. Even with the new remakes now, like they do kind of grab you in my opinion, because it's technically Michael Myers, it's technically within the same story now, which we can talk about later. But yeah, to me, Michael Myers, most definitely. I would like to talk about classics like Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, but they don't make movies like that anymore, and that's unfortunate.
Again, Hollywood has that issue of, oh, let's make them heroes again.
Yeah, perfect example, Dracula. The one with the guy from Fast and Furious 6.
Dracula Untold.
I hate stuff like that. I was just like, this is supposed to be horror. This is more action. Like, what are you?
Yeah, and then they did what is it? I, Frankenstein. They tried to remake The Mummy with Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Oh my God, I hated that. Okay, so I'll just say this. What I hate about the movie was that it wasn't focused on horror. They had so many genres in that one movie, and I was like, I can't tell. 1 second you're a horror movie, but yet you come off as an action movie, then you come off as a comedy, then you come off as a thriller, and then you try to go back to a horror movie. No wonder that the Dark Universe failed, because I was just like, you didn't know what you wanted to do. You were trying to copy Marvel. So I was just like, oh my God. And what sucks is that they had an interesting cast, especially Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp was supposed to play the Invisible Man. I wanted to see that so bad, but then they fucked that up. I was like, clearly the way how they make movies now aren't that great. To answer that question myself, I prefer the classics back then, absolutely. But with that said, my next question also is, do you feel like when it comes to horror movies, do you think there are any new creative ideas that can be done with horror movies, or do you feel like any creative idea that's out there is already used up and worn out?
No, I mean, like, if you have the creative mind, like, if you have the creative mind to do a horror movie, if you're twisted enough, you can make a horror movie. I mean, look at fucking Jordan Peele. He was a comedian and made 2 horror movies, and one of them won an Oscar. There's no such thing as like, oh, it's been drawn out. It's just the fact that you need to be fresh with it, and you need to find somebody who's fresh with it. Also, you need to be in that mindset of like, you can't just write a horror movie to write a horror. You got to be like thinking the most twisted kind of stuff to be writing a horror movie.
When it comes to horror movies, whether you've seen some or not, on this particular topic, obviously what horror movies are well known for their franchises, doesn't matter which one, is that they're always known for basically sequels, constant sequels, and remakes. Halloween has nothing but constant sequels. Scream, constant sequels. Chucky, Nightmare on Elm Street. There's another one.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, Thank you, Friday the 13th, or even the classics. That's when it comes to classics for them, it's more remakes. When it comes to the normal serial killers that we all like to follow, it's nothing but constant sequels. And then even now they're getting remakes. The new trend for sequels and now prequels at this point are superhero movies, right? Do you feel like prequels or sequels or remakes when it comes to horror movies, do you think they work the majority of the time, or do you think they fail the majority of the time?
Okay, so here's my thing. A good example of one that worked was Halloween. I mean, like, a lot of people can take that or leave that, but I feel like that remake, it did its job. Like, you guys were still scared. You guys people liked it. They still had problems with it, but people did like it. Mm-hmm. They had an issue when it came to the director saying, oh, I'm going to make this a trilogy, and I'm going to retcon all the other ones except for the first one.
The only issue I have with that is that some of the kills that were in that movie, even though they were great, they were kind of ripped off from the sequels. They just, now that they retconned the sequels and were like, nope, that don't count. No, they technically what he did was now in this new one. And now the sequel to this new remake, Halloween Kills, was terrible. It wasn't god awful, but it wasn't good either.
Like, what I'm saying is, it's just the remake to Halloween, a lot of people did like it. I feel like it did its job.
Let's talk about other examples too while we're at it. How about like Chucky, the remake?
Okay, Chucky? That didn't do its job. That did not do its job. That was horrible.
I like the concept. It was interesting. It just didn't come off right. I mean, Chucky first started off, and then it was a rogue AI. And then what I didn't like about that one was the fact that his appearance. I didn't like that version of Chucky. It didn't look right.
Here's my thing. I feel Mark Hamill could play a good Chucky if it wasn't a freaking AI inspired thing. I feel like he could have been a serial killer.
No, yeah, sure.
And Mark Hamill has the voice for that. Okay.
What I don't also like are the remakes of Texas Chainsaw Killer, and then obviously from what you saw, because I still haven't seen it yet. Unfortunately, you said you saw
that piece of garbage. New Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which the director even said retconned all the other ones. The only one that matters is the original.
That's something that they're doing. I think that's enough right now.